And hello from me, and I know that I'm the last man standing between you and a drink and the end of the day. And I'm here to give you a bit of context. So let me try here in the concluding speech that we have in this conference to give you some context about ecosystem strategies and helping make sense of ecosystems. Now, what are ecosystems and why do we care? Let me give you a bit of data, and let me walk you through history very, very quickly. Consider the top firms in the world by market capitalization. If we go to 2006, what do we see? What you expect. The biggest American oil company, the biggest American-based industrial conglomerate, the biggest European oil company, the biggest American tech firm, the biggest American bank. If you go to 2011, what do you see? Kind of the same image, other than China has gone up. So you see the biggest Chinese firm and the biggest Chinese oil company, but pretty much a similar cast of characters. Here's the interesting thing. From 2016 onwards, the cast of characters of the most valuable companies in the world has changed. Who are they? Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. Now, you can say that these are technology firms, but I think that that would be partly missing the point. They're not just technology firms. They are the firms that are using technology in order to change sectors, and they do that through ecosystems. Now, let me try to help you understand what ecosystems are. And for those of us who love typing on planes with Blackberries, I'm not going to be speaking about Nokia's quite yet, but since we're in Finland, I guess that I can't not. So let me give you an example of ecosystems from someone, not a Finn, but someone running a Finnish firm just before it hit the iceberg. And what Stephen Elop, as a CEO of Nokia, realized is that the battle of devices has now become a war of ecosystems, where ecosystems include not only the hardware and software, but developers, applications, e-commerce, advertising, search, social applications, location-based services, and many other things. Our competitors, Elop said, aren't taking our market share for devices. They are taking our market share with an entire ecosystem. This means we're going to have to decide how we either build, catalyze, or join an ecosystem. Wise words said a few years too late after Nokia had essentially sabotaged its chances by sabotaging Symbian that it participated in. Now, if you think about ecosystems, any consultant book that you would open more recently, and this one comes from McKinsey, says, forget industries. New ecosystems are the base of competition, and they're going to be emerging in place of many traditional industries. And essentially, they say that the world is changing. Now, exactly how and why do we care? Well, let me take 4 questions that I'd like to cover in the remainder of our time together. First, what are these digital ecosystems and how do they differ from other ways of organizing? Second, why are these ecosystems becoming all the rage now, and how does their presence change my competitive landscape and what's expected of me? Third, how should I engage in platforms and ecosystems? What role should I play? And fourth, how should I change my organization as I compete in a world of digital ecosystems? Now, what are digital ecosystems? And soon enough, you will see the role of IoT in empowering them. Well, ecosystems are ways in which you make stuff work together. Now, did we used to have ways of making stuff work together? Of course we did. And there were 2 different ways that we used to have so far. You either say, look, I'm going to be buying everything that is needed because I'm a grown-up and I can go to the market, I can find the solutions, I can make them work together, and that's going to be the end of it. Or I'm going to have someone that acts as a system integrator. Whether the system integrator is a firm like Airbus or Boeing, integrating technology, engines, software, hopefully working, and providing something that I give to the final customer, or Accenture or EDS or Dell saying, here's your solution. That is the choice that the integrator has. Now, does the integrator work with a number of different suppliers? Yes, they do. But we kind of knew that model. Now, what is different when it comes to an ecosystem? Well, think about your phones. Apple doesn't decide which apps you use. Google doesn't decide which apps it uses, but there's a critical difference. It decides who is in that perimeter from which you can choose. You do not choose freely. You need to be part of their ecosystem. So here's this interesting new form of organizing that's coming up. It is this combination that you have whereby the customer has the freedom, but freedom has its limits. And the limits are being set up by a new type of player that derives their power by providing these big bags through which we choose that affect what we do in our lives. And what they are trying to do is to find more and more products and services that work together so that we as customers feel that our services, our needs for a service is being met. But on the other hand, they, as the owners, as the architects of this group, can actually make things that work for them. And if you think about what these organizations that are known for building ecosystems do, is that they are trying to create a set of orchestrated, interconnected firms, not left to chance, but driven by clear design. Let me give you one example of how these ecosystems are starting to build broader and broader and encompass things that affect our daily lives. But first, let me ask you a question. How many of you know Nest? Hands up. We're doing kind of okay, but in an Internet of Things crowd, I expected that we would have a better knowledge of what Nest is. Well, what Nest is a digital thermostat, and it is the company that has challenged Honeywell, that is a traditional dominant firm in thermostats, and it is, unsurprisingly, owned by Google. And what these guys do is that they use a predictive model. They just give you a little thing that you put on your wall. You say, I want it hotter, I want it colder, and soon enough, because they've got predictive analytics, they know what we're going to want before we even know that we want it. They say, okay, there's a pattern, I got it. Now, not only have they been able to do that and push Honeywell out, they also have been able to create a number of complementers that enter their ecosystem. Think about what is connected to Nest, and let's take a look at the following video.
All around the world, the home is the center of people's lives. It's where you start your day and end your day. It's where you raise a family and make memories with the people you love. So wouldn't it be cool if our homes could be more aware? If our homes could learn from us and help take care of us? At Nest, we do just that. It all started with the Nest Learning Thermostat. Then came Nest Protect. But for us, that was just the beginning. Our goal has always been to bring this kind of thoughtfulness to the rest of your life. That's what Works with Nest is all about. Works with Nest makes it possible for your Nest thermostat and smoke alarm to interact with the things you use every day. Because we make connections between these different parts of your life, we can deliver personalized comfort, safety, and energy savings without you having to do a bunch of work. We've been working with companies big and small to make this a reality, and we're very excited about what we've been able to do.
Up is a combination of a band that you wear around your wrist and an application on the phone that together help track your movement throughout the day. By connecting your Up and your Nest, you can have this complete effortless experience. Because Up's right on the body, we have this rich contextual set of information about what the person's doing in the moment. And so that means those days that you might wake up a little bit earlier, before you even get out of bed, we can let Nest know that, so it can then adjust the temperature in the room to start to be for my daytime. This is about technology, not for technology's sake, but technology in service of a better life, helping us be more human, allowing us to live our lives better.
Why would we ever bring the thermostat and washer together? That's a good question. If you look at it from a perspective of energy consumption, it's an easy one. These are the big energy consumptions at the home, and they're also the ones which require a lot of day-to-day interaction with the consumer. If you have already the thermostat communicating to the utility company, it's much easier if there's one signal going to the Nest, and that is disseminated through the household to all appliances to basically reduce consumption now because we're at the peak. It's just a tremendous consumer benefit. It just happens in the background.
Lifx is a LED light bulb that you control with your smartphone.
When we first heard about the Nest Developer Program, we were really excited to be a part of it. With Nest Protect and Lifx, when a smoke alarm event is triggered, we can pulse your lights red, which can help you see in the dark, as well as give extra notification that there's a problem in the house, which is especially good if you're hearing impaired. Nest brings this whole other dimension to Lifx. Who would have thought by combining Nest products and Lifx products we could help save lives?
Automotive industry is in a very deep change. I foresee that in the next 10 years, the changes are going to be more substantial than in the last 50. Likely your car today interfaces with your home through the garage door opener. After learning about the Nest Developer Program, we thought about, how can we take this to the next level? How can we, integrate the car better with your home? As you get into your car and drive home, the car will, in the background, send the estimated time of arrival to your Nest thermostat. So your home can be at the right temperature as you arrive at home. Taking workload off of customers, it will improve safety, it will increase comfort, because people just don't have to think about all these things. It's just great, like magic in the background.
At Nest, we believe these experiences are the future. We're able to connect things inside and outside your home to better anticipate your needs. We're already doing some pretty incredible things, but this is just the beginning, and we can't wait to see what's next.
So what do I take away from that? First, that Big Brother really likes child's music. But slightly more seriously, what I take away from that is that organizations are trying to create groups of products that work together to deliver value to the customer. And that happens in ways that we haven't seen before. Now, ecosystems come to their own when there are specific links between firms. What do I mean? Well, I told you a moment ago that ecosystems are things that work well together. You're going to say, well, a tea bag, tea leaves, hot water, a cup. Well, these things need to go together to make a cup of tea. I work in a British institution, I had to mention that. But nobody's going to be speaking about the tea ecosystem. It's just daft. We just put these things together. Ah, yes. But think about what is likely going to be in the hotel room where you are. These Nespresso machines. What is Nespresso? Nespresso is just coffee. But there's an interesting twist. And that twist is that the Nespresso system has got some capsules that only work with Nespresso machines. Not every granule can work with every machine, not every tea leaf with every bag. So this very small change of taking something generic and making it specific all of a sudden allows you to have an ecosystem. And then when you are Nestlé, you can say, I don't want to be in the business of making machines. I don't even want to have machines that bear my name. I'm going to go to speak to Krups and with Jura and with Brown. I'm going to say, look, you guys are going to be my complementers. You're going to be producing the machines. I'm not going to be making the money off them, or perhaps I'm going to have some percentage. It's my call. But here's the deal if you want to complement my capsule. So the same thing that Nespresso is doing, having this specific capsule that then opens up to organizing an ecosystem around it, is what we see happening with technologies. And the reason that you see organizations do it is that they understand that you can leverage others' energy and investment and excitement without needing to have either the skills or the funds to support it. You are creating an ecosystem relying on your partners to do the complementary investments that ultimately develop something that adds value to the entire ecosystem and to you as the firm that is orchestrating. And ecosystems are different because they rely on relationships between firms, but if you start working with firms, you understand that these relationships are not the same. So I've been working with BCG and we're trying to help firms figure out how on earth the world is different. Consider Volkswagen. Volkswagen used to have joint ventures, the oldest joint venture in China with SAIC, to create a car. But consider the nature of these relationships in the connected car collaboration ecosystem. over 30 partners in over 5 deal types in at least 6 countries in 6 different industries. We are now speaking about a different way of organizing with a logic of its own and with managerial challenges of its own. In any industry that you look at, you see the same pattern. You see this shift in the nature of collaboration, and you see ecosystems become a topic that needs to be more carefully understood. Now, do we have any evidence that this is more than anecdote? We actually do. Another thing that we did is we had some of the juniors in BCG go and scour the web and use some machine learning and data analytics. And we said, well, how much is the term ecosystem mentioned in the annual reports of all the big firms? Firms making over 10 billion in sales or worth over 10 billion in market cap. And the answer is this has been growing a lot. And you can see how from 2008 to 2017, the data show a drastic increase of the organizations that are mentioning it. Now, we did a second analysis, which we said, well, okay, is there any difference between those that do and those that don't? Now, I'm an academic, and I know that correlation does not impute causation, but we see a significant and stable difference between the firms that use the term ecosystem and firms that do not. What does that suggest? Well, I don't know. Perhaps it is that firms that grow like the term ecosystem, but it certainly looks like something that matters, and we need to understand it. So I hope that I've told you what these digital ecosystems are and how they differ from what we have seen in the past. The second question that I promised to answer is, why are these ecosystems becoming all the rage now, and what the heck does it mean for me? There's a number of changes that are happening, not all of them digital. And to illustrate them, I want to take you through another English picture. This is a picture of the Great Hall of the Guildhall. You still have some nice fancy dinners happening in there. And you will see the same image throughout Europe, but if you look carefully, in other parts of the world. What does that represent? That represents the way that the society and economy was structured, which is an economy and society based in exclusion. We didn't quite know how things could work out, so we gave groups of people, professions, or firms, types of organizations, exclusive rights to do stuff. Lawyers will do lawyer stuff. Architects will do architect stuff. Banks will only have this remit. Now, this way of organizing started crumbling about 35, 40 years ago. And regulators started doing something really interesting. They started saying, there can be new ways in which we can organize stuff. If you asked a banker 20 years ago, and if you told them that, you know what, there will be 20 years later in the Bank of England a unit that is going to be called a regulatory sandbox, like the sandboxes where children learn how to play, you would have been laughed off the stage. Nobody would have thought that you're speaking sense. That's what the Bank of England has now. And that's what the regulators are doing, who have realized that they need to start organizing things in different ways. What does that mean? It means that the regulation is going down, which means that we can reorganize economic activities in ways that were not possible before, not just because of technology, but because of the way that the regulators look at the world. The second thing is that digitization has been important. Whether you were working in a factory, whether you were working in an office, you needed to be next to each other in order to transfer work from one bit to the other. What did that mean? It meant that there were economies of scale and economies of scope when you put things in the same space. What digitization has offered is the possibility of reorganizing the way that you do stuff. And it means that we can now reshuffle the way that production is structured. And there's a final thing that makes a difference, and that is that there has been a massive drop in both the cost of information and its storage and transfer. Now, anything that you look at in terms of the data of how much information we have, the very reason for which we have a conference in the Internet of Things is that we can costlessly store and ship information about stuff that would have been seen trivial. And now we're saying, hey, we can find new ways of adding value by taking this information and shifting it around, because the cost of doing so has gone down dramatically. The other thing that is happening, and that's the final academic thing I've got on the screen for you, is that we are seeing something which is called modularization. Now, what is modularization? Well, modularization means that something that people in computer design realized, rather than having everything depend on everything else, you can break it up in different modules. Rather than writing one massive program, you can have a BIOS, on top of which you can have an operating system, on top of which you can have an application, on top of it you can have an application that is based on applications, and much of what you see in the exhibition halls here are modular structures of combining and recombining. That means that you can have much greater variety, and that means that ecosystems are the organizations or the institutions that manage these modules. And here's the technical detail. Modularization is never perfect. You're going to see on the left-hand side of this graph that everything depends on everything else, but in a way that is managed. That is what the ecosystem orchestrators do. They manage the interdependencies between the different players. So essentially, what you see is a new way of organizing that has been brought up by the changes of technology. But it is profound because we really are changing the world the way the world is changing. And if you think about what the Internet of Things is doing, I think that it is fundamentally important because it is offering the possibilities of creating and organizing things in new ways. You guys are not only the services that are new and interesting because they find new ways of adding value. You are at the foundation of reorganizing how value can be created and how it can be captured. The Internet of Things is a broad church. It affects a number of different components, and it enables these changes that we see. It enables, supports, and funnels the changes in the business ecosystems that are changing strategy around us. And finally, we see that ecosystems emerge because we've done the boring stuff. We have improved each narrow product, so now we're going broader and broader. We're going into things that engage different segments, different sectors. And if you look historically, that's what we have seen successful ecosystems do more and more. What does that mean? Well, it probably means that we need to rethink the way that we add value. So far, if we were better than the other firms that were equally crap at dealing with what the customers want, we were successful. Success was abusing the customer less than our competitor, because the customer had no choice. What these changes in the competitive environment mean is that you can reorganize stuff, and if you don't do it, someone else will. Which means that you need to start taking the customer a little bit more seriously, and it means that you need to be more customer focused, which is why you are seeing design thinking and all of these associated ideas to finally make much more of an inroad. Because you can reorganize things, and you really need to empathize with the customer before you prototype and test stuff to see whether it works or not. The other thing that it means is that you need to not only think about the value proposition that you have to the customer and ask yourself, what does a customer really want? You also need to think about what your complementers want. You want to work with other firms. Guess what? They got more options than they used to. And that means that you need to start working with your complementers, thinking that you are competing for their attention and their business, which is one of the things that, with my colleague Martin Reeves and others, we've spoken about recently. So let me now speak briefly about how you should engage in platforms and ecosystems. You could say, look, you showed me the slide in the beginning. It's simple. Let me now do what Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple are doing. And that is to be the orchestrators of ecosystems. Actually, what they do is worse. What you'll see on your screen is now a 3-year-old picture that shows all the different ventures that they have. And I see many organizations that think that what they need to do is be the orchestrators of ecosystems, which is kind of like saying, you know, people are playing basketball. Just look at what LeBron James did and do the same things. Not good advice. What you would do is delude organizations that think that they are great to be at the core of ecosystems, and they would be wasting their money and effort to fulfill a role that they can't. Being an orchestrator is a difficult business, and you need to understand whether you should do that or whether your best option is to participate in multiple ecosystems as a partner. And I think that taking a long, hard look as the competitive environment is changing, thinking about what your role is one of the most important strategic choices that you're going to make. And you see organizations, even those that are big and strong, that are making some rather bold moves in the area. Think about the automobile OEMs. You see, the car makers are seriously concerned that because of the creation of new ways of serving the mobility needs, they're going to be marginalized. Why? Because if you order an Uber, who the heck cares about what car is being driven with the Uber? You can't choose anyway. You want mobility. And when you look now at millennials, the amount of people that are taking driving lessons and getting the permits has been going down very rapidly because people say, I want mobility, I don't want a car. Now, automobile companies saying, oh my God, if that happens, we become marginalized because we're going to be commoditized, nobody will care about cars anymore. And they say we need to counter Uber by creating mobility services, and if we are in the luxury segment, we need to play that game aggressively. But what is interesting is that both BMW and Mercedes-Benz thought of it, and rather than saying, we are big, we're going to be offering the Mercedes-Benz services or the BMW services, these two traditional rivals united, and you will soon see the high-end mobility services that are offered by a joint venture between the two most competitive firms in the high-end European car sector. And that speaks about a change in terms of the mind shift. You also probably don't need just one, but multiple ecosystems. What I see when I walk in the stands in a conference such as this one is organizations that can support the operation of ecosystems in a number of different parts of the value chain. And you need to think about what your ecosystem strategy is. You need to think about all the different things that are facilitated by the Internet of Things. And while I see ecosystem in graphs such as this, I think it should be a plural. It's ecosystems, because IoT drives and shapes a number of these ecosystems. You also need to think about how do you engage in each of these ecosystems? What are the particular choices? Do you engage in one or multiple ecosystems? What type of ecosystems and what is your role? And that's where strategy is going to be heading. And what we see is that in the Internet of Things, there is already a thickening web of alliances that will shape the strategic contours of your sector. But most importantly, as you start thinking about ecosystems, make sure that you don't do the mistake that I see most organizations I work with do, which is that they mix up one letter. They don't think about their ecosystems, they think about their ego systems. You ask them to put their ecosystems, and invariably, they are in the center, some of the big tech players are around, and far in the distance might be their customers, let alone their complementers. Ecosystem focus is the inverse. It is understanding what customers want and understanding what your complementers want in order to add value. And ecosystems also allow you to rethink where you're going to be applying and leveraging your skills. Because all of a sudden, in a world that can be reshuffled so easily, you may understand that the skills that you build in one area, in one sector, can be valuable in a very different one. It's kind of like thinking about this dollhouse there, you know, a toy that has been used for one purpose. But the world is increasingly moving to a world that looks more like Lego blocks, where you can use your skills either to, here, the blocks to build a house, or to build a rocket, or to build a tree. You can reinvent yourself, because much as you're being attacked by new types of organizations, you can leverage yourself in new areas. Very quickly, let me speak about what you can do to change your organization. Working with BCG, we were like, okay, all right, what is going to be a structured approach so we can have all these different things that are needed? I think that, to me, the most interesting thing is that as we started peeling the onion, we saw that in addition to doing all the right things in terms of the value proposition, the alignment of strategic goal, the understanding of partnerships, comes the organization talent. the organizational setup, the talent and skills, and the culture that needs to change in order to be able to allow your organization to add this value. And for inspiration, it's valuable to look not just in Silicon Valley, but look in areas like China. If you think about Haier, a company that was nowhere a decade ago and has become one of the leading companies in the white goods area, they've got this new model that they're excited about called Rendanhei. What does that mean? Well, it means employees and value of users, and it asks the customers to be at the core of what the employees are trying to do rather than the hierarchy of the firm. It asks the people in the front line to identify new users and new ecosystems that are being pushed up the organization, as opposed to the traditional planning that has created a lot of rigidity. And if you look at Alibaba, the way that they want to bring the market into the organization is an effort to be able to respond and shape a world of ecosystems. Since I spoke of ecosystems, I thought that I'd leave you with a story that comes from evolutionary biology, which I think is a nice parable for us to think about the impact of change in the environment and the possibility that we have to learn from nature. Now, what does biology have to do with strategy? It does. And the connection there is that every species, or the success of every species, is a function of its reproduction strategy. If in terms of reproduction strategy they've got a good one, then healthy genes go on, then the species can expand. And this is a story of the Australian jewel beetle. And the Australian jewel beetle had got a very clear strategy. The male knew that a healthy female is big, round, brown, and shiny. That worked very well, up until Australia became colonized. Once it became colonized, colonizers started having barbecues. Barbecues had beers, beers had beer bottles. And you may be noticing an uncanny resemblance between a healthy female jewel beetle and a beer bottle. And what you're watching on your screen is a haplessly sexually aroused male jewel beetle trying to copulate with a beer bottle. The problem is not only that this is not going to be met by evolutionary success. The problem is that another species, the termites, understand that lunch is going to be close by during mating season. So I guess that in a world of changing ecosystem, my exhortation to you all is be the termites, not the jewel beetles. Thank you very much.